Anticipated 50% increase in maritime security capabilities by Q4 2026. Introduction. The South China Sea has become a focal point of escalating tensions and international competition, primarily due to China's assertive territorial claims and militarization of the region. As a result, a significant increase in maritime security capabilities across the defense, shipping, and energy sectors is expected by the fourth quarter of 2026. This report summarizes the factors contributing to this anticipated growth, the responses from various nations, and the implications for regional and global maritime security. 1. Context of the South China Sea disputes. 1.1 China's assertive claims. China claims a vast majority of the South China Sea, an area rich in natural resources including an estimated 11 billion barrels of oil and 190 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. These claims conflict with those of several Southeast Asian nations, particularly the Philippines, Vietnam, and Malaysia, leading to ongoing territorial disputes. 1.2 Historical background. The territorial claims in the South China Sea began in earnest in the 1970s and tensions have escalated significantly since. A pivotal moment occurred in July 2016 when the Permanent Court of Arbitration ruled in favor of the Philippines, rejecting China's expansive claims. Despite this, China has maintained its stance, refusing to recognize the tribunal's authority. 2. Military buildup and rising tensions. 2.1 Militarization of the region. China has been actively reinforcing its military presence in the South China Sea, constructing military installations, airstrips, and ports on reclaimed islands. This militarization has led to confrontations, particularly with the Philippines, exemplified by aggressive tactics employed by the Chinese Coast Guard against Philippine resupply missions in disputed waters. 2.2 Recent clashes. In 2023, incidents involving dangerous maneuvers by Chinese vessels against Philippine ships intensified, highlighting the precarious nature of maritime operations in the region. This included the use of water cannons and military-grade lasers against Philippine vessels, exacerbating the already tense situation. 3. International response. 3.1 United States commitment. The United States has reaffirmed its dedication to ensuring freedom of navigation in the South China Sea. This commitment has manifested in increased freedom of navigation operations and strengthened military alliances with Southeast Asian nations. The U.S.-Philippines Mutual Defense Treaty has been emphasized as applicable to potential conflicts arising in the South China Sea. 3.2 Regional partnerships. In addition to the U.S., other nations, notably Japan, have ramped up their military support for countries like the Philippines and Vietnam. Japan has supplied military equipment and facilitated joint training exercises aimed at enhancing the maritime security capabilities of these nations against potential Chinese aggression. 4. Diplomatic efforts and challenges. 4.1 Calls for code of conduct. Amidst rising tensions, there have been calls for a binding code of conduct to govern maritime activities in the South China Sea. While the U.S. supports such initiatives, China has largely dismissed international rulings complicating diplomatic efforts and raising questions about the efficacy of existing international maritime laws. 4.2 The role of ASEAN. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations (ASEAN) has been involved in discussions regarding regional security and the promotion of stability in the South China Sea. However, the lack of a unified stance among member states has hindered a cohesive response to China's assertiveness. 5. Projected increase in maritime security capabilities. The convergence of military, diplomatic, and economic factors is expected to drive a 50% increase in maritime security capabilities across the defense, shipping, and energy sectors by Q4 2026. This increase will likely include enhanced naval presence, increased deployments and joint exercises among U.S. and allied naval forces, advanced surveillance technology, investments in drone satellite technology and reconnaissance capabilities to monitor maritime activities. Strengthen partner nations, military aid and training programs for Southeast Asian nations to bolster their defense capabilities against Chinese incursions. 6. Conclusion. The anticipated increase in maritime security capabilities in response to the evolving dynamics in the South China Sea underscores the strategic importance of the region amidst rising tensions and competition. The interplay between military readiness, diplomatic initiatives, and adherence to international law will be pivotal in shaping the future of maritime security and stability in this critical area of global trade and geopolitics. Addressing these challenges will require sustained cooperation among nations committed to upholding the principles of freedom of navigation and territorial integrity. The anticipated 50% increase in maritime security capabilities across the defense, shipping, and energy sectors by Q4 2026 amidst heightened tensions in the South China Sea reveals several counterintuitive aspects of international relations and security dynamics in the region. 1. Increased militarization versus diplomacy. While one might expect that heightened military tensions would lead to a complete breakdown of diplomatic efforts, the opposite seems to be occurring. Countries are simultaneously ramping up their military capabilities and exploring diplomatic avenues for conflict resolution, such as calls for a binding code of conduct in the South China Sea. This dual approach illustrates a nuanced understanding that both deterrence through military strength and dialogue are essential in managing complex international disputes. 2. China's territorial claims versus international law. China's assertive territorial claims and refusal to recognize international rulings such as the 2016 Permanent Court of Arbitration decision present a paradox. Despite being a signatory to international treaties, China actively undermines the very frameworks that are designed to maintain order in international waters. This behavior complicates the notion that adherence to international law is a universally accepted principle and instead highlights a selective application of such laws based on national interests. 3. U.S. involvement as a deterrent versus provocation. The increased U.S. presence and commitment to freedom of navigation operations may be perceived as a stabilizing force. Yet it could also be interpreted as provocative by China. Historically, one might assume that reducing military presence would decrease tensions. However, the U.S. strategy of enhancing military cooperation with Southeast Asian allies, while intended to deter aggression, could escalate confrontations, particularly if perceived as encroachment by China. 4. Regional alliances versus national interests. Countries like the Philippines are deepening military ties with the U.S. and Japan, suggesting a collective security approach to counter China's influence. However, this raises questions about national sovereignty and the extent to which smaller nations can align with larger powers without compromising their own interests. The Philippines under President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has shifted toward a more confrontational stance against China, which may appear counterintuitive given the risks of provoking a larger conflict. Yet it reflects a strategic calculation that prioritizes national interests over historical ties with China. 5. Economic considerations versus security risks. The South China Sea is critical for its vast natural resources, yet the push for increased maritime security capabilities might paradoxically lead to economic disruptions. Heightened military presence and potential conflicts could jeopardize shipping routes, impacting global trade. This creates a dilemma where nations must balance the need for security with the economic consequences that increased militarization may bring. 6. Technological advancements versus traditional naval power. The anticipated increase in maritime security capabilities is likely to include advanced technologies such as drone cyber capabilities and surveillance systems. This contrasts with traditional naval power, indicating a shift in how maritime security is conceptualized. Instead of solely relying on battleships and aircraft carriers, nations are recognizing the importance of integrating technology into their defense strategies, which may appear counterintuitive to those who equate military strength with conventional forces. 7. China's regional strategy versus global isolation. While China's actions in the South China Sea may lead to increased isolation from Western nations, they simultaneously strengthen its ties with other countries that may benefit from its economic investments. This suggests a counterintuitive dynamic where aggressive territorial claims could enhance China's influence over other nations that prioritize economic gain over geopolitical stability, creating a complex web of alliances that are not purely adversarial. 8. Public perception versus government actions. The public in many Southeast Asian countries may view the U.S. presence as a necessary counterbalance to Chinese aggression while simultaneously harboring fears of being drawn into a larger conflict. This dissonance highlights the complexities of public opinion in foreign policy. Where citizens may support military alliances for security but fear the repercussions of escalating tensions that could lead to war. In summary, the anticipated 50% increase in maritime security capabilities by Q4 2026 amid rising tensions in the South China Sea underscores a series of counterintuitive realities in international relations. It reflects the intricate balance nations must maintain between military readiness, diplomatic engagement, economic interests, and public sentiment in a rapidly evolving geopolitical landscape. In the report detailing the anticipated 50% increase in maritime security capabilities by Q4 2026, several critical themes and points of significance emerge, particularly surrounding the geopolitical dynamics in the South China Sea. While many aspects of the report may draw attention, certain nuanced details could be overlooked, yet they hold substantial implications for regional stability and international relations. Overlooked aspects and their significance. 1. Resource claims and economic implications. The report highlights the extensive natural resources in the South China Sea. Estimated at 11 billion barrels of oil and 190 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. This statistic, while impactful, may not fully resonate with the broader implications of energy security and economic interests at stake. Significance: control over these resources not only fuels national economies but also influences global energy markets. Nations in the region may increase their military capabilities not only for territorial claims but also to secure energy supplies, which could lead to further militarization and conflict. The economic motivations behind territorial claims illustrate how resource competition can escalate tensions beyond military posturing to actual confrontations over resource access and control. 2. Historical context of territorial claims. The timeline provided in the report underscores decades of territorial disputes, notably the grounding of the BRP Sierra Madre by the Philippines in 1999 as a means to assert sovereignty. While this is a critical event, the historical context of these disputes is often underappreciated. Significance: understanding the historical grievances and the long-standing nature of these conflicts is essential for comprehending current tensions. The failure to resolve these disputes diplomatically can create a cycle of militarization and aggressive posturing that may lead to miscalculations or unintended escalations, particularly as nations reinforce their military presence based on historical claims. 3. China's rejection of international rulings. The report mentions China's refusal to accept the 2016 Permanent Court of Arbitration ruling favoring the Philippines. This rejection of international law is a pivotal element that could be overlooked. Significance: this stance not only undermines international legal frameworks but also sets a precedent for other nations to disregard international rulings, potentially leading to a more anarchic international order. The implications extend beyond the South China Sea, affecting global governance, international maritime law, and the credibility of international institutions. Furthermore, such a position may embolden China in other territorial disputes beyond the South China Sea, altering regional dynamics significantly. 4. Multilateral military cooperation. The report notes increased military cooperation between the U.S., the Philippines, and Japan in response to China's assertiveness. However, the depth and implications of these partnerships may not be fully appreciated. Significance: this growing multilateral cooperation is indicative of a shift towards collective security arrangements in the Indo-Pacific region, which could deter Chinese aggression but may also provoke a stronger response from Beijing. Increased joint exercises and arms transfers can lead to an arms race as regional powers seek to bolster their defenses. The importance of these alliances reflects a strategic pivot that could redefine the security architecture in the Pacific, impacting future diplomatic engagements and conflict resolution efforts. 5. Diplomatic efforts and the need for a code of conduct. While the report mentions calls for a binding code of conduct in the South China Sea, the challenges and the complexities of achieving such an agreement are often understated. Significance: the lack of a cohesive framework for managing disputes could exacerbate tensions and lead to miscommunication during crises. A code of conduct could facilitate dialogue and reduce the likelihood of confrontations, yet the varied interests of claimant states and the overarching influence of China complicate negotiations. The failure to establish such frameworks can lead to a security dilemma where nations feel compelled to enhance their military capabilities in response to perceived threats from others, potentially spiraling into conflict. 6. Technological advancements and cybersecurity. The expected increase in maritime capabilities likely involves not only traditional military assets but also advancements in technology, including cybersecurity measures to protect maritime interests. Significance: overlooking the role of technology, including cyber capabilities, could lead to an underestimation of the complexity of modern warfare and maritime security. Cyber attacks on maritime infrastructure or navigation systems pose significant risks that could originate from state and non-state actors. The interplay between traditional military capabilities and cyber warfare will be crucial in shaping future maritime conflicts and security strategies. 7. Potential for non-military resolutions. The report emphasizes military responses to the tensions in the South China Sea, but it may overlook the potential for non-military resolutions and the roles of economic ties and diplomacy. Significance: economic interdependence can serve as a stabilizing force, reducing the likelihood of conflict. Encouraging diplomatic engagement and economic collaboration among claimant states may yield more sustainable solutions than military buildup. The potential for joint resource management or cooperative agreements in resource extraction could help mitigate tensions and foster a more peaceful coexistence in a region fraught with conflict. Conclusion: the anticipated increase in maritime security capabilities by 2026 is a critical focal point for understanding geopolitical dynamics in the South China Sea. However, several nuanced aspects of the report deserve closer examination. The interplay between resource claims, historical context, rejection of international rulings, multilateral cooperation, the need for diplomatic frameworks, technological advancements, and the potential for non-military resolutions offer significant insights into the complexities of regional security. Recognizing and addressing these factors is essential not only for policymakers in the affected regions but also for global stakeholders invested in maintaining stability and peace in one of the world's most strategically important maritime areas. 1. China's assertiveness and resource claims. The South China Sea is a critical region due to its vast natural resources, including an estimated 11 billion barrels of oil and 190 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. China's extensive territorial claims have led to heightened tensions with Southeast Asian nations such as the Philippines, Vietnam, and Malaysia. This assertiveness has not only challenged territorial integrity but has also sparked conflicts over resource exploitation, thus necessitating a robust response from affected nations. 2. Military buildup and strategic implications. China's militarization of the South China Sea is evident through land reclamation, construction of military bases, and deployment of naval assets. The aggressive tactics employed by Chinese vessels against Philippine resupply missions highlight the increasing confrontations in the region. This military presence raises concerns about freedom of navigation and the potential for armed conflict, prompting a re-evaluation of defense strategies among regional and global powers. The expected 50% increase in maritime security capabilities by 2026 is a direct response to these escalating military tensions. 3. International response and alliances. The U.S. has reaffirmed its commitment to maritime security through freedom of navigation operations and strengthening military partnerships with Southeast Asian countries. The Mutual Defense Treaty with the Philippines has been reinforced to apply to the South China Sea, indicating a significant shift in U.S. foreign policy towards greater military involvement in the region. Additionally, Japan's increased military support for the Philippines and Vietnam serves to bolster regional security architecture against Chinese aggression. This dynamic illustrates the growing importance of alliances in addressing maritime security challenges. 4. Diplomatic efforts and the need for governance. Amid rising tensions, there is a push for a binding code of conduct to govern maritime activities in the South China Sea. While this reflects the need for diplomatic solutions, China's rejection of international rulings such as the 2016 Permanent Court of Arbitration decision complicates the situation. The interplay between military readiness and diplomatic initiatives is crucial for establishing a stable maritime environment. The effectiveness of these diplomatic efforts will significantly impact the future of maritime security in the region and the adherence to international law. 1. The Cuban Missile Crisis 1962. This pivotal Cold War confrontation between the United States and the Soviet Union arose from the discovery of Soviet ballistic missiles in Cuba just 90 miles from the U.S. mainland. The crisis highlighted the intense geopolitical competition between the two superpowers and brought the world to the brink of nuclear war. In response, the U.S. increased its military readiness and naval presence in the Caribbean, paralleling the current response to China's assertive behavior in the South China Sea. The resolution involved a combination of military deterrence and diplomatic negotiations, with both sides ultimately reaching an agreement that included the U.S. removing missiles from Turkey in exchange for the Soviet withdrawal from Cuba. 2. The Gulf of Tonkin Incident 1964. This event involved two separate confrontations between North Vietnam and the United States in the Gulf of Tonkin. The U.S. claimed that North Vietnamese boats had attacked American destroyers, leading Congress to pass the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution, which granted President Lyndon B. Johnson the authority to increase U.S. military involvement in Vietnam. The incident escalated U.S. engagement in the region and exemplified how perceived threats in maritime zones can lead to significant military escalations. Similar to the South China Sea situation, where the U.S. has increased its military presence in response to Chinese actions. The Gulf of Tonkin incident illustrates how maritime security issues can trigger broader military commitments. 3. The Iran-Iraq War 1980–1988. During this prolonged conflict, both Iran and Iraq sought to control key shipping lanes in the Persian Gulf, which were vital for oil exports. The U.S. and other nations intervened to protect maritime trade routes and ensure freedom of navigation, particularly during incidents of attacks on oil tankers. The conflict led to an increase in naval deployments and security measures in the region, similar to the anticipated increase in maritime security capabilities in response to tensions in the South China Sea. The war demonstrated the vulnerabilities of maritime supply chains and the potential for international conflict over strategic waterway control, highlighting the importance of maritime security amidst national interests and regional rivalries. The anticipated 50% increase in maritime security capabilities across the defense, shipping, and energy sectors by Q4 2026 reflects a critical response to the evolving geopolitical landscape in the South China Sea. This region, rich in resources and strategically vital for global trade, has become a focal point of international competition, particularly between China, the United States, and allied nations. The following predictions outline the key developments expected in the coming years. 1. Escalation of military capacity. As tensions continue to rise, countries involved in the South China Sea disputes are likely to enhance their military capabilities significantly. The US and its allies, particularly Japan and Australia, will likely increase their naval presence, conducting more frequent joint exercises and enhancing interoperability with Southeast Asian nations like the Philippines and Vietnam. The focus will be on advanced maritime technologies, including surveillance systems, anti-ship missiles, and drone capabilities. 2. Increased diplomatic engagement. In response to the heightened military posturing, diplomatic efforts will intensify. There will be a push for a binding code of conduct in the South China Sea supported by ASEAN nations and external powers. However, China may resist such agreements, leading to a complex interplay of negotiations and potential confrontations. The effectiveness of these diplomatic initiatives will hinge on the willingness of all parties to engage constructively, balancing military readiness with dialogue. 3. Maritime supply chain security enhancements. With the South China Sea being a critical maritime route for global trade, the shipping industry will invest in bolstering security measures. This may include the adoption of advanced tracking technologies, enhanced risk assessment protocols, and stronger insurance frameworks to mitigate potential disruptions due to geopolitical tensions. Shipping companies could also diversify routes and increase the use of convoys through contested waters. 4. Technological innovations. The defense and energy sectors are expected to invest heavily in technological advancements to improve situational awareness and response capabilities. Innovations such as artificial intelligence and threat detection, unmanned naval vessels, and enhanced cyber defense mechanisms will play a crucial role in maritime security. These technologies will help mitigate risks posed by hostile actions and ensure the safety of critical infrastructure. 5. Shifts in regional alliances. The geopolitical landscape will continue to evolve as nations reassess their strategic alliances. Countries in Southeast Asia may seek closer ties with the US and its allies to counterbalance China's influence. This could lead to the formation of new defense pacts or enhanced bilateral agreements focused on maritime security. On the other hand, China may strengthen its partnerships with countries in the region that share its interests, promoting alternative frameworks that challenge US dominance. 6. Increased incidents at sea. As military presence escalates, the likelihood of incidents at sea will rise. Clashes between vessels, particularly in contested areas like the Second Thomas Shoal, may become more frequent and aggressive. Both sides may engage in risky maneuvers, raising the potential for miscalculations that could lead to broader conflicts. This reality underscores the need for robust communication channels to prevent escalation. 7. Energy security concerns. With significant energy resources at stake, the energy sector will prioritize securing access to these assets amid rising tensions. Countries may increase their naval escorts for energy shipments and exploration activities in disputed waters, leading to potential standoffs. Collaborative efforts among nations to safeguard energy interests will become paramount, influencing the dynamics of international energy markets. 8. Humanitarian and environmental impacts. The increasing militarization of the South China Sea may have humanitarian and environmental consequences. Fishing communities may face disruptions due to heightened military activity, leading to conflicts over fishing rights. Environmental concerns regarding the impact of militarization on marine ecosystems will likely gain prominence, prompting calls for sustainable practices and cooperative management of shared resources. 9. Global economic implications. The geopolitical tensions in the South China Sea will have broader economic ramifications. Disruptions in maritime trade routes due to military confrontations could impact global supply chains, leading to increased shipping costs and delays. Businesses will need to navigate these uncertainties by diversifying supply chains and investing in risk management strategies. 10. Long-term strategic stability. Ultimately, achieving long-term strategic stability in the South China Sea will require a multifaceted approach integrating military readiness, diplomatic engagement, and cooperative security mechanisms. The success of these efforts will depend on the commitment of regional and global powers to uphold international norms and resolve disputes peacefully. In conclusion, the anticipated 50% increase in maritime security capabilities by 2026 underscores the urgency of addressing the challenges posed by China's assertive actions in the South China Sea. The interplay of military enhancements, diplomatic efforts, and technological advancements will shape the future of maritime security in this critical region, with far-reaching implications for global trade, regional stability, and international relations. As nations navigate this complex landscape, the collective goal should be to ensure a secure, stable, and cooperative maritime environment.